Okay, so we've been talking about propaganda, and I just want to put it back into the bigger picture. You ready? I want to put it back into the bigger picture of what we're trying to achieve. So the first thing, let's take a look at our guiding question for today. The first one up there says, how do I analyze propaganda? So we're going to make sure that we're all really clear about what that process looks like. And we've done this a little bit before, but we're going to review those steps, and I'm going to demonstrate it for you and show you the thought process that I used as I'm analyzing propaganda. But a bigger picture that we should address is, how does this fit into the essential questions for the unit? So if you look right here, it says, how are non-combatants affected by war? We're analyzing propaganda in order to get after that question. Non-combatants, again, remember, are people that are not fighting in the war. This is a common question that you'll see anytime we look at a conflict or a war, because of course we know that it affects the people that are actually in it, but what impact does that war have on people that are not in it, or people at home? And so we're looking at propaganda today, and we're figuring out how we analyze it so that we can get a better feel for how how the war affected non-combatants. So first thing, hopefully you're on the propaganda objectives and tools handout. Where's mine? Oh. And so we're going to walk through the process of how we analyze a propaganda poster. Now, social studies has lots of images that you look at. You know that we're looking at propaganda posters, but you also see things like political cartoons, charts and graphs. All of those things are generally analyzed in a much the same way. There's basically steps that you always go through whenever you see an image, and that's the process that I'm going to demonstrate for you right now. And so, we'll start with this poster. Some of you might have seen this before, but we'll do it together right now, and I'll show you how I think it through. Remember, we had these steps that we use. Steps to analyze a primary source or a political cartoon or a propaganda poster. Since these are primary sources, they come from the time period. So the first step that I'm always going to take is I want to figure out if I have this information or not. What country made this? Now, in this activity, we have that information right in front of us, so that makes step one really simple. You can look at your sheet and you see, oh, it's from the United States. So right away, that frames my thinking. I know that this is a poster made by the United States. Whenever we're looking at propaganda, we want to keep in mind what exactly is propaganda. So I think back, and I'm recalling that we learned about propaganda last week, and we compared it to television advertising, and how advertisers or commercials try to get you to do things. They try to get you to buy things. And so then we related that to propaganda. It's the same strategy. It's the same basic idea. It's trying to get you to think, act, or feel a certain way. So I know that this poster is made by the United States and is trying to get people to think, act, or do something, or feel a certain way. So I've got step one taken care of. Now let's say that we didn't know that, if that information wasn't provided. I could use other clues in this poster and eventually figure that out, but I would just continue on to step two if I didn't have that information readily available for me, and then hopefully it would become clear. Second thing on our list of things that you do to analyze is to ask yourself, what do you see? Okay? I don't want you to just start, I never try to figure it out before, I just do this basic step of figuring out what's here. So, I'm looking at this image and I see a soldier. Okay? I see a soldier and I look at his face and I notice that he has a black eye right there. And he's carrying a weapon. And then the background looks, I don't know, I really can't make that out, but it looks like there's smoke or something in the background, so maybe that's the battlefield. And then here, I notice this right here is a guy, but on his head reminds me of what you wear at graduation, the cap that a graduate wears. So I'm ready to go on to step three because I don't really see anything else other than this soldier with a really serious or solemn look on his face. I notice the black eye, and I notice the student or the person who just recently graduated. Then it says, the third step is to read anything that's on the poster, the caption or any of the words that are on it. And so that's what I'll do. And as I read it, I'm gonna try to think about what does it mean. When the boys come home, and I remember, from Johnny, get your gun, they're talking about going over there, and they refer to them as the boys, so we must be talking about the soldiers. While I was over there, what were you doing here? Students of America, how will you answer him? Okay. Before I go any further, I'm going to think about that for a second. Students of America. That fits with what I see up here. This kid I thought was a student with the graduating cap on his head. So I think right away that this poster is trying to talk to students, but I'm going to keep going. Down at the bottom it says United War Work Campaign. And then there's a date, November 11th through the 18th. Well, that sounds like something that you would go to. That sounds like an event. This sounds like the title of an event, the United War Work Campaign. Okay, so I've read the caption. I read it and I thought about it. I tried to consider what the caption meant. The next thing I want to do is think about what I know. Okay, I kind of did that a little bit as I was reading this caption. I know that they referred to soldiers going over there. They're talking about, since this is World War I, I'm connecting, I know that all the fighting is over in Europe for the United States. And I know that this is a student, and a student wouldn't be old enough to enlist in the military yet. So, I also want to connect to the common objective and tools that we talked about last week. Whenever we're considering the objectives or the tools that are used, we want to think about how does that connect to what we see in the poster. And since this is asking students, while I was over there, what were you doing here? And then it gives the name of something to do, I feel like that's trying to encourage somebody to participate, encourage a student to do something while soldiers are over there fighting. And I remember that that was one of our objectives. If I go through a process of elimination, I know this isn't recruiting because those students are too young to go into the military. And it's talking about while I was over there, like this was in retrospect, after the fact. So you can't answer, I'll go to the military now, when he's talking about what were you doing while I was there. To finance the war, it can't be that, because we're not asking anybody to buy a war bond. I don't see anything about Liberty bonds or some other titles that would indicate, hey, give some money to the government to fund this. It doesn't say anything about, it says to eliminate dissent and unify the country behind the war effort. I don't feel like this poster really gets at people who disagree with the war. This is asking students to do something. Conserving resources, it can't really be that, because it doesn't mention, save your food, save your oil, or conserve steel. It has to be this one. And it's an organization. It says to participate in organizations that support the war effort. What specifically? You're supposed to go to the United War Work Campaign. Students of America, you need to do this because you don't want to have to tell the soldier that you were just sitting around doing nothing while they're over there. And I'm thinking about what I know. I know over there is terrible. I know all about the trench warfare and all about the poison gas and the tanks and the artillery. I know all that stuff is terrible. As a student, I don't want to have to say, I didn't really do anything at all to help your cause. And so, going back to objectives, we know that in our analysis we have to describe what objective it is, or explain what objective it is. So you'd write down to increase participation in organizations to support the war effort, but we can't stop there. We need to give our evidence. How do we know that? And so I would make note of the fact that it says United War Work Campaign. That sounds like something that you have to go and do. It gives us set time that you should go do it. It's addressing the students of America. That's a particular group that's supposed to go and participate in this. The other piece of analysis is figuring out what tools this poster used, what techniques. So think back as a commercial, we talked about what are some things that commercials do to try to get you to buy things. It's the same thing with propaganda. What are some of those tools that propagandists use to get you to think, act, or feel a certain way? I could go through kind of the same process that I did before, but I want to start with what do I think about why I'm supposed to do this. I don't want to have to say I was doing nothing because I would feel guilty. That's an emotion. If I'm a student talking to this poor war-worn soldier and I have to say I did nothing while you were over there, I'm going to feel bad. So this is trying to give me a reason not to feel bad. This is an emotional appeal to avoid guilt. I remember that's one of my tools, or that's one of the common tools propagandists use. And so emotional appeal, it's an emotional appeal because this poster is trying to get people to avoid guilt, to do something so you don't have to feel guilty. It says, students, while I was over there, what were you doing here? That's my evidence for why I think there's an emotional appeal. So that propagandists usually use two tools, sometimes even more than that, but all you have to identify are two tools in your analysis. So I'm thinking about all these tools that are up here. I don't think it's demonization, because I remember that demonization is trying to make the enemy look like the devil, and this doesn't do that. I didn't see any name calling. Patriotic appeal. This tool involves using patriotic language or symbols to appeal to the viewer's national pride. I look back here, it says students of America. I notice it doesn't say students of Lewis Central or students of whatever. It's talking about you as an American. Maybe that's a patriotic appeal, but I want to look at the rest. There's no half-truth or lie. I didn't see any exaggeration. Don't really see a catchy slogan that I want to go chant at a rally or something, so I don't think it's that. An evocative visual symbol. That might be it, because I remember when we talked about what that means. Evocative, the root word is evoke. And if you're going to evoke something, it means you're going to bring it out of somebody. And so this tool involves using symbols that appeal to people's emotions. Well, we've been talking about the emotion of guilt. And then here are the tools. Flags, statues, mothers, children, and enemy uniforms to promote the war effort. Nothing in that poster was on this list, but I know those are just examples because it says like. There could be others. I am wondering, I look at this guy, they use the soldier with his battered face and with the, war-torn area in the background, and I think maybe he's the evocative visual symbol because he evokes some of that guilt that I might feel if I had to say I didn't do anything.
Well, there's a kid on the poster.
There's what?
There's a kid on the poster.
Referring to the student?
Yeah.
Okay, possibly that would work. Now, how would you think that tool is, how do you think that tool is trying to get somebody to do something then?
So we're not the one standing there.
Okay, very good. So we just did the same thing. We both thought maybe it's an evocative visual symbol. I thought it was evocative visual symbol because this soldier evokes pride in your country, as well as I want to avoid the guilt of having to tell him I didn't do anything. And then we had somebody who thought that this would be the evocative visual symbol because you don't want to be this student who has to look him in the eye and say, I didn't do anything. Now, when you're listing these things for tools, yes?
It also had the student in the shadows.
Really?
Yeah, it didn't show you.
Another one? Where?
It had the student in the shadows right there. You can't see him, what it looks like.
So what do you think the propagandist was doing by doing that?
Making it so you're not the one that's not helping, being in the dark.
Okay, that's interesting. See, now we can all, that's a very valid interpretation and a use of that tool. So we can all see things a little bit differently. We're all going to get to the same thing though. We're all looking at this propaganda poster achieves or tries to achieve this objective, and these are the tools that it uses. So as you can tell just from our discussion right now, there could be more than one tool. There could be 2, 3, 4, 5 tools. The key would be in what both of us did is describing why, or explaining, justifying, using the evidence from the poster to say, here's what this tool is, and here's my evidence for saying that this is the tool. Okay, so you're going to have a chance here in just a second to do some of that work, again, of analysis of these propaganda posters. So the other day, we had half of us here and half of us over there. How many posters did you finish? 2 left? Okay, so let me show you what you do after you've completed all of them. Okay, we're gonna continue with the poster analysis, and you're gonna get them all, excuse me, get them all